Okay, so I'm measuring out and setting out where my drivers are going to go on the on this baffle. I've drawn a centre line straight down the middle. I've done some quick testing on this mid-range driver, and it's going to work really nicely with these tweeters. So I've got a number of these. You can pick these up quite cheap. They're called a ribbon, but I don't think they are. Yeah, I've never really taken one apart to see what's going on inside, but they're all right. From about 4,000 hertz upwards, they're very, very, very clean, and they do carry on way beyond 20k. So yeah, that's what I'm going to use. So this will be surface mounted. So I want to keep a bit of gap there, and I want to keep that distance different to that one. Not too worried about these being the same. I don't really want to offset the drivers. Also with our mid, I don't want these, or this distance, and that distance being the same. Again, I'm not worried about the left and right. We're going to play this up probably to about 3.5, 4 kilohertz. So I do want it quite close to the tweeter to keep our acoustic centers pretty near. What I'm probably going to do is build an enclosure that also goes round the tweeter for the mid. So I want a bit of room there for that piece of wood to come through, to go up and come across. So I'm probably going to be about there. And then my woofer, not really too worried about where this goes. As close to the mid as I can, but again I want some meat there to get my wood through for my mid enclosure. So I'm probably going to end up something like that, I think. Yeah, let's just carefully pencil around this. So the woofer is going to be rear mounted, and I'll probably rabbit out a bit of the baffle for this felt gasket as well, so it locks in. So I think I've got my centre for my woofer, which is going to be there. And I think for my mid, we're around 18 centimeters down. It's going to be about right. This is the right hole saw for that. The mid is going to be mounted from the back, so my mid enclosure will have a removable panel. I'll also bring this forward a bit as well. So I think that's pretty much about there. Yeah. So I'll probably try and keep that as the bottom. Right, so I want to take that out. that out, and then I'll measure the diameter of our driver and router that out as well. Yeah, nice. What a lovely tight fit. Look at that. So, yep, woofer's in there nicely. Then we'll have our mid, which has been rebaited in the back. Ah, lovely. Really, really clean. Acoustic centres are nice and close. Pretty close, close enough. I need to get a piece of wood there. I mean, we're going to be crossing to this at about 500 hertz. Very pleased. Yeah, actually a 500 hertz wavelength is about 60 centimeters, so absolutely fine. That's really cool. Nice. Right, that's my baffles done. All the bolt holes drilled, holes around the side to fix it in. Perfect. And on the back, I need to tidy this up. My enclosure for the mid, so there'll be a board over this, and that board will also have the crossover on it. Perfect job. All recessed out for the mid to sit in there, so it's basically flush with the front. Rebate here for the woofer gasket to sit into to bring that to the front. Bolt holes. Yeah. Lovely jubbly. Right. Final wobbly cam end of the video. So I've painted those baffles as well, and I've now fitted the drivers. And I think they are looking lovely. So that's going to conclude part 2. In part 3 I'll get the cabinets done, covers done, and then loads and loads of measurements and crossover design. But before I get to that, which will be a while, I've got another pair of my HA35s to finish off. Drivers are there, and those Rogers LS7Ts to finish. Drivers are there, and a car battery to fit. Catch you soon.